"My herd is yours, but make me a mother before winter," said the rejected wife to the Apache. The wind cut across the alien plains like a sharp blade, carrying the dry dust of the red-tinted soil and the distant scent of strange metallic plants that grew in clusters along the dunes. The sun had barely risen, but its twin glows cast long, strange shadows across the scattered rocks, turning the landscape into a strange, otherworldly wilderness. In the middle of this harsh terrain stood a lone homestead, its wooden walls patched with metal scraps and reinforced with parts from old human machines that had been abandoned decades ago. This was the ranch of Caleb Turner, a man hardened by years of frontier life on a planet far from Earth, a man who had learned to survive where most would perish. Caleb walked along the corral, checking each of the genetically adapted cattle he had raised since they were calves. Their thick hides shimmered slightly under the twin suns, a subtle metallic sheen added through genetic engineering to help them withstand the harsh sun and cold nights. Each animal was precious. Each one represented not just survival, but hope. Hope that Caleb could maintain the ranch alone, even after the tragedies that had struck his life. A soft rustling in the distance drew his attention. Caleb squinted against the harsh light. A lone figure emerged from the horizon, moving steadily across the dunes. The woman's silhouette was familiar, and yet it had changed with the years. The wind tugged at her cloak, revealing the practical clothing beneath. Simple but sturdy, adapted to life in the alien desert. She had once been his wife, though the townsfolk had spoken of their separation in hushed tones, hinting at jealousy and scandal. Now she approached with a purpose Caleb had never seen before. When she drew near, the words left her lips, and they struck him like a cold gust. "My herd is yours," she said, her voice steady, "but make me a mother before winter." Caleb stopped in his tracks, staring at her. For a moment the wind carried only silence. Then the woman stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. There was no pleading in her gaze, only determination. She had returned not as a broken or desperate woman, but as someone who understood the unforgiving world they lived in. Someone willing to stake everything on survival and hope. "I don't understand," Caleb finally said, his voice rough from disuse. "You want... what exactly?" "I want a chance," she replied simply. "A chance to survive this winter, a chance to live fully before the cold takes everything from me. I offer my herd to you, to help feed your stock and maintain your ranch. In return, I ask for a child." Caleb shook his head, trying to make sense of the proposition. He had faced many dangers in his life. Alien storms that could strip flesh from bone, raiders who hunted his cattle, and beasts that prowled the dunes at night, but this was different. This was a human heart speaking of life and hope in a place where hope was a rare commodity. "You know the risks," he said finally, his tone cautious. "This world, it doesn't forgive mistakes. Winter comes fast, and it leaves nothing alive in its path if you aren't prepared." "I know," she said. "That is why I came to you. I have nothing left to lose, and I will do whatever it takes. My herd can sustain your stock. I know how to manage the cattle, how to drive them across the plains. Let me prove myself." Caleb studied her. She spoke with confidence, but there was also an edge of desperation. It reminded him of why he had once loved her. Her courage, her drive, her unwillingness to give up even when the world seemed set against her. And yet, he was wary. Life on this frontier was not about feelings. It was about survival. "I don't know if I can," he began, then paused. "If you're serious, you'll need help. The plains are unforgiving, especially now. And there are things out there, things that don't care about human lives. I know. That is why I will join the Apache. The nomads who roam these lands have skills that surpass even our own. If they agree, they can guide the herd safely, and we can survive together." Caleb frowned. The Apache, or rather, the alien nomads who resembled the native peoples of old Earth in their customs and dress, were mysterious and powerful. They were not to be trusted lightly, but they were the only ones who truly understood the desert's deadly ways. "And what if they refuse?" he asked. "Then I will find another way," she said simply, her jaw set. "But I believe they will help."
"They respect those who prove their worth. I will prove mine."
Caleb looked back toward the horizon. The distant dunes shimmered under the rising suns. He could imagine the herd spread across the plains, driven hard by the cold winds of the upcoming winter. He could imagine bandits and predators stalking them, testing their strength. And he could imagine the woman, alone and determined, standing firm against it all. "Very well," he said finally. "If you are serious, we will try. But you will need more than courage. You will need skill, endurance, and trust. And even then, there are no guarantees." She smiled faintly, a hint of relief softening her face. I understand. I am ready. The woman worked alongside Caleb, repairing fences, checking water supplies, and inspecting the herd. She moved with precision, her hands sure and steady as she tended to the cattle. Caleb observed her silently, noting the way she adjusted to the alien environment with a mix of human ingenuity and hard-earned experience. At night, the desert was a frozen expanse. Twin moons rose over the dunes, casting a cold silver glow across the sands. Fires flickered near the homestead, and the distant howls of alien predators reminded them both of the stakes. The woman sat quietly, tending to the smaller calves that had been born during the previous cycle. She whispered softly to them, speaking in a gentle, rhythmic tone that seemed to calm the animals despite the cold and wind. Caleb watched her from a distance, his expression unreadable. He had faced many dangers in his life, hostile settlers, alien beasts, deadly storms, but this situation was something different. This was a test of human will, of hope, of the fragile bonds that could be formed even in the harshest places. He realized that survival on this planet was not just about strength or skill, it was about trust and about courage that went beyond fear. When the time came to approach the Apache like nomads, the woman was ready. She carried herself with confidence, but there was a subtle tension in her posture. The desert winds howled around her, and the distant cliffs cast long shadows, turning the dunes into a shifting maze. In the distance, the nomad camp was visible, a cluster of tents and structures made from alien materials blending perfectly with the landscape. The leader of the nomads, a tall figure with markings etched into his skin and eyes that seemed to see everything, emerged to meet her. He studied her silently, assessing her resolve and her intentions. I wish to make a journey across the plains, she said, her voice steady. I have cattle that need protection. I wish to survive the winter, and I seek your guidance. The nomad leader's eyes narrowed. The plains are unforgiving. Many who come with cattle leave with nothing. Why should we help you? I am willing to give what I have, she replied. My herd can sustain you and yours. And I am willing to prove my worth. I will follow your guidance, learn your ways, and endure the desert's trials. The leader studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Very well. But know this. The desert tests all who enter. Only those who endure will survive. Are you prepared? I am, she said without hesitation. As she returned to Caleb, he saw the determination in her eyes. The plan was set. Together, they would face the harsh alien wilderness, relying on the nomads' wisdom, their own skills, and the fragile bonds of trust forming between them. The herd would be their test, the desert their challenge, and winter the ultimate judge. The woman who had once been cast aside was now standing as an equal, ready to face the frontier's brutal trials. In this strange world, survival depended on courage, resourcefulness, and an unbreakable spirit, qualities she possessed in abundance. The twin suns dipped lower in the sky, painting the desert in shades of red and gold. The winds continued to blow, carrying the promise of danger, adventure, and the harsh beauty of life on the frontier. And as Caleb looked out across the dunes, he realized that this journey would test not only their survival skills, but the very strength of the human heart. In the distance, the first stars of the alien night began to appear, small points of light against the vast, dark expanse. Somewhere out there, the future waited, uncertain and untamed. And both Caleb and the woman knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, for the herd, for survival, and for the hope of new life before winter claimed the land. The morning air was sharp and cold, carrying the scent of dry sand and alien flora. Caleb saddled his horse, a strong hybrid bred for endurance in the desert winds, while the woman checked the herd one last time. The twin suns were still low on the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched across the dunes like fingers. The plains awaited, harsh and unforgiving, and every step forward could mean danger or survival. The woman mounted her own horse, gripping the reins with practiced skill. Though she had been away from the ranch for years, her movements were sure, her confidence clear. She looked at Caleb. Are you ready? She asked. He nodded, though his eyes scanned the horizon with caution. We have to move fast. The herd must reach the first watering station before the midday heat. If we stall, the animals could weaken, and predators are more active when the sun rises fully. They set off, the herd moving behind them in a slow, steady line. The cattle's hooves kicked up the red dust, leaving faint trails that stretched behind them across the plains. Caleb led from the front, the woman riding slightly behind him, keeping an eye on the animals. Every so often she guided a stray calf back to the herd, whispering softly to calm the nervous creatures. The desert was alive in ways that were both beautiful and dangerous. Strange plants with metallic leaves shimmered in the sun, and distant rock formations jutted out like jagged teeth. The wind carried a low, eerie hum, a sound that made even the hardiest human pause. The woman felt a chill, though the suns were high enough to warm the air. She knew that survival here required not just strength, but constant vigilance. Hours passed, and the herd moved steadily. The woman's mind was focused on the animals, on the harsh landscape, and on the promise she had made, to survive, to endure, and to prove herself worthy of a life renewed. Suddenly, the distant sound of movement reached her ears. She tensed, scanning the dunes ahead. Caleb noticed her reaction and slowed his horse. "What is it?" he asked. "Something moving," she said, her voice low. "I don't know what, but it's coming fast." They watched as a group of strange creatures emerged from a ridge. Their bodies were long and low, covered in hard, chitin-like armor that reflected the sunlight. Four-legged predators, each the size of a large horse. With glowing eyes and sharp mandibles, they moved with terrifying speed. The herd sensed danger immediately, and several cattle began to panic, their movements becoming erratic. Caleb pulled his rifle, aiming carefully. "Keep them together. Don't panic. The herd must stay calm." The woman rode closer to the panicked animals, clapping her hands and shouting softly. Her voice, confident and commanding, helped steady the herd. She guided the frightened calves back into line, moving with a combination of grace and force. Caleb's sharp shots rang out as the predators lunged, each sound echoing across the empty plains. One predator fell, but others pressed on. The woman didn't flinch. She rode through the dust, moving between the animals and the creatures, forcing the herd to move steadily forward. Caleb covered her, his eyes scanning for other dangers. By the time the creatures retreated into the distance, the herd had mostly stabilized. "That was close," Caleb said, wiping sweat and dust from his face. The woman nodded, though her breathing was steady. "It's never just the desert," she said. "We have to be ready for anything. The plains take no mercy." By midday, the suns were high, casting harsh light over the dunes. Watering stations were rare, and the nearest one lay miles ahead. The herd's movement slowed as heat and fatigue began to set in. Caleb noticed a few cattle lagging behind, their steps weak. He gestured to the woman. "We need to push them a bit. Keep the pace steady, but firm." She nodded, guiding the horses along the sides of the herd, using soft commands and the occasional whip to keep the animals moving. The suns beat down, making every step exhausting, but the woman's determination never faltered. She reminded herself constantly of why she had returned, not just to survive, but to reclaim a life she had lost. As they crested a dune, the landscape opened into a wide valley. In the distance, a small cluster of tents and structures appeared, blending with the rocky terrain. It was the Apache-like nomads' outpost, where they could rest, resupply, and gain guidance for the next stretch of the journey. The nomads were waiting, as if they had expected the humans. Their leader, the tall figure with etched markings and piercing eyes, stepped forward. "You have done well to come this far," he said. "The desert tests many, and few survive this first stretch." The woman dismounted, bowing slightly in respect. "We are grateful for your guidance." "My herd and I rely on your wisdom." The nomad leader studied her, his gaze sharp. "Your courage is noted, but courage alone does not ensure survival. The desert has rules, and the herd is only as strong as its weakest members. You must work together, human and alien alike, or you will fail." Caleb joined them, noting the tension in the air. He understood that their survival now depended on alliances, fragile, uneasy, and born of necessity. The nomads guided the herd to a shaded area near the outpost, where artificial water tanks gleamed in the sunlight. The cattle drank deeply, their energy returning slowly as the woman checked each animal. Caleb observed her careful work, noting how naturally she adapted to the alien environment. Her hands were skilled, her eyes attentive, and her mind constantly calculating the next move. "That was impressive," Caleb said quietly. "You handled the predators well. You kept your head, even under pressure." "I've had to survive on my own before. The desert. It teaches you quickly." The leader of the nomads approached them. "The journey will get harder," he said. "The next stretch is where many fail. There are raiders who hunt both humans and animals, and the terrain becomes unstable. You must be ready." "I am ready," the woman said firmly. "I will do whatever is needed." As evening approached, the outpost came alive with activity. Nomads moved swiftly, checking the herd, preparing supplies, and ensuring the humans were settled. Caleb and the woman sat by a fire, sharing a simple meal of dried meat and hard bread. The heat of the flames was comforting against the cold night air, and the stars above seemed impossibly bright against the dark sky. Caleb broke the silence. "You've changed," he said, his tone almost hesitant. "You're different than when you left." The woman looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "I had to change," she said. "I faced dangers I didn't know existed, made choices I never imagined, and survived because I had no other way. This journey, it's not just about the herd or winter. It's about proving that I can endure, that I can live fully despite the odds." Caleb nodded slowly, understanding. Life on the frontier was never easy. It demanded everything: courage, skill, and sometimes a willingness to face the impossible. And she had proven herself worthy. Night fell fully over the desert, and the wind howled once more, rattling the tents and carrying the distant cries of alien predators. The woman stayed alert, checking the herd periodically and watching the horizon. Sleep would come little, and only in short bursts, but every moment mattered. Tomorrow, the herd would move again deeper into the dangerous plains, and the journey would only grow more perilous. Caleb watched her, impressed and wary. He had learned long ago that survival on this frontier required more than strength. It required trust. And slowly he realized that he was beginning to trust her, perhaps more than he had trusted anyone in years. The nomad leader approached one last time before the night fully settled. "Rest while you can," he said. "The desert will test you in ways you do not yet see. Trust in each other, human and human, human and nomad. Only then will you survive." The woman nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She returned to her post near the herd, eyes scanning the dark horizon. The twin moons cast long shadows across the dunes, and the alien night seemed endless. Yet she felt a quiet determination. She would endure. She would survive. And she would prove that life, even in the harshest desert, could still bring hope. By the time the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the herd was moving again. The plains stretched endlessly, dangerous yet beautiful, full of challenges that would test every ounce of skill and courage. Caleb rode alongside the woman, and though neither spoke much, there was an unspoken bond forming, a bond forged through danger, trust, and the shared responsibility of life and survival. The journey had only just begun, and already the desert had claimed its lessons. Predators, raiders, and storms lay ahead. But together, human and woman, human and nomads, they would face whatever the alien plains demanded. And through it all, the woman's determination burned bright. She would become a mother before winter, and nothing in the desert could stop her. The plains stretched endlessly, a barren mix of red sand and jagged rock formations, their sharp edges catching the twin suns' light like blades. The herd moved steadily, guided by Caleb the woman and the Apache-like nomads. The wind carried a constant hum across the dunes, a reminder that the desert was alive and unpredictable. Every step was a test, every glance over the horizon a measure of danger. The morning began quietly, the herd calm and moving in an ordered line. Caleb noticed the woman riding alongside him, her eyes scanning the dunes, alert and sharp. Despite exhaustion, she looked composed, every movement deliberate and precise. The trials of the first part of the journey had tempered her. She had faced predators, scorching suns and harsh winds, yet she remained unbroken. Caleb felt a grudging respect growing for her. She was no longer the woman he had once cast aside. She was a survivor. Without warning, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. Caleb squinted. The shape was too large to be natural. "Raiders," he muttered, his voice tense. "Humans, or something else?" "Humans," Caleb said, "or settlers who have gone rogue. Either way, they're dangerous, and they want our herd." The nomad leader rode forward, his face unreadable. "Stay calm. The desert teaches quickly. Fight if you must, but always protect the herd first." As the dust approached, the shapes of mounted raiders emerged. Their armor was cobbled together from old earth relics and alien metal, glinting sharply in the sun's light. They carried long energy rifles, scanning the horizon with aggressive intent. The woman spurred her horse forward, moving between the lagging cattle to calm them. Her voice rang out over the wind, firm and commanding. Caleb loaded his rifle, taking careful aim. The nomads formed a defensive line, their weapons at the ready. The leader signaled, and the riders fell into position around the herd, creating a protective barrier. The raiders reached the edge of the herd, their mounts kicking up clouds of red dust. Caleb fired, a precise shot that forced one raider to pull back. Another charged forward, swinging a crude energy lance, but the woman was faster. She sidestepped her horse, guiding a calf back into line, and yelled a command that startled the attackers. The nomads pressed forward, using both skill and strategy to push the raiders back. It was chaos. Sand swirled, hooves thundered, and the crackle of energy weapons cut through the air. The woman stayed focused, moving between animals in danger, her instincts sharp and unyielding. Caleb watched her, a mix of admiration and concern tightening his chest. She was courageous beyond measure, yet the danger was real. One wrong move could cost them the herd, or worse, their lives. After a tense struggle, the raiders finally withdrew, disappearing back over the dunes. The woman lowered her arms, breathing heavily but composed. The herd had survived, the nomad's strategy had worked, and no lives had been lost. Caleb approached her, his expression a mix of relief and awe. "You handled yourself well," he said quietly. She met his gaze, sweat and dust clinging to her skin. "The herd comes first. That's all that matters." By midday, the sun was high and the heat oppressive. The herd's movement slowed, and several calves struggled to keep pace. The woman rode beside them, offering encouragement and guidance. Every so often, she would use her hands to guide straying cattle back into line, whispering words of comfort. "Keep them steady," she told Caleb, who nodded and adjusted the herd's pace. "The next watering station is miles ahead, but the desert will give no mercy if we falter." The nomads moved alongside, using signals and quiet commands to maintain order. Their presence was reassuring, yet it reminded the woman of how alien and dangerous this world truly was. Even after weeks of preparation, the plains remained a relentless challenge. As the sun began its slow descent, the desert shifted. The wind picked up, carrying the first signs of a storm. Dark clouds appeared on the horizon, moving quickly, casting long shadows across the red sands. The nomad leader called a halt. "We must take shelter," he said. "The desert storms are deadly. Animals and humans alike can be lost in minutes if caught unprepared." The group moved the herd into a small natural canyon, its rocky walls providing partial protection. The woman dismounted, checking the cattle for signs of fatigue or injury. She found several calves struggling, their energy depleted by the heat and stress of the raid. She knelt beside them, brushing dust from their hides and whispering soothing words. Caleb helped, passing water from a small supply to both humans and animals alike. The storm hit with sudden force. Wind screamed through the canyon, carrying sand and debris that stung skin and eyes. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the landscape in harsh, brilliant flashes. The woman held firm, guiding the herd into a tight group for protection. She rode between them, ensuring no animal strayed, no calf was lost. Caleb stayed close, covering her and helping secure weaker cattle. Hours passed. The storm raged, relentless and unforgiving. Yet through it all, the woman's focus never wavered. She spoke quietly to Caleb once, her voice almost lost in the wind. "We can't let them fear control us. The herd feels it. If we falter, even for a moment, we lose everything." Caleb nodded, understanding the truth in her words. Survival depended on willpower, courage, and unwavering attention. The desert allowed no mistakes. By the storm's end, the plains were transformed. Sand had shifted, rocks displaced, and the herd's paths obscured. The nomads assessed the damage and quickly adjusted their route. The woman helped, moving with calm precision, guiding the cattle through the newly formed obstacles. Caleb noticed her resilience and determination, realizing that this journey had forged a new version of her, someone capable of standing against the desert, the raiders, and the storms alike. As night fell, they reached a small oasis, a rare collection of water and alien vegetation. The herd drank deeply, rejuvenating after the day's trials. Caleb and the woman sat nearby, sharing a simple meal while the nomads maintained a quiet watch. The woman looked at the stars above, their alien constellations unfamiliar yet beautiful. "We've survived the worst so far," she said softly, "but I know winter will test us even more. You've proven yourself already. Few humans could endure what you have. I'm beginning to trust you again." She met his gaze, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Trust is earned here," she said, "and we have more to earn before winter ends." The next morning, the plains were quiet but tense. The desert was deceptive. Calm could turn to chaos in minutes. The herd resumed its journey, moving steadily but cautiously. The woman rode at the side, her eyes scanning for predators, raiders, or unstable terrain. Caleb followed, ensuring that both humans and animals remained safe. The terrain shifted into rocky hills, jagged formations that made the journey slower and more dangerous, Cattle struggled over loose stones, and the woman dismounted to help guide the weaker animals. Caleb noticed her calmness under pressure, her steady hands and clear mind. Each obstacle was a test of skill, endurance, and patience. By afternoon, distant sounds reached them, the faint echo of engines, metallic and deliberate. The woman's eyes narrowed. "Raiders again?" she asked. Caleb listened carefully. "No, it's something else." Machines. Old Earth relics moving across the plains. Could be scavengers, could be automated defenses. The nomads signaled for caution, moving the herd into a narrow pass where they could control the approach. The woman stayed alert, ready to defend the animals and guide them safely. The machines appeared, small, wheeled constructs, some armed, others seemingly scanning for resources. They were slow but persistent. Using tactics learned from the nomads, the woman and Caleb guided the herd along a concealed path, avoiding the machine's detection. Sand shifted underfoot, rocks provided cover, and the nomad signals directed their movements. The herd remained calm under her guidance, the animals sensing her control and confidence. Hours later, the machines were behind them, and the herd was safe. Caleb breathed a sigh of relief. "You've done it again," he said.
The woman shook her head.
"This isn't over. Every step brings new challenges, but we're learning and surviving." As night settled, the group set camp near a small canyon. Fires flickered against the walls, and the herd huddled together for warmth and protection. The woman checked each animal, ensuring none were injured or exhausted. Caleb and the nomads watched her work, recognizing her skill and determination. For the first time, Caleb allowed himself a thought he had long avoided. Perhaps she had always been stronger than he had given her credit for. The frontier had changed her, yes, but it had also revealed a resilience and courage that even he could not ignore. The desert was vast, dangerous, and unforgiving. Yet in the quiet of the night, Caleb and the woman shared a silent understanding. Survival depended on each other, on the herd, and on the trust slowly forming between them. Winter loomed, but they had faced raids, storms, and machines, and had endured. The twin moons rose over the dunes, casting silver light over the desert. The wind whispered promises of new challenges, yet the woman remained vigilant. She had endured the first trials of the journey. Now the final stretch awaited, and with it the true test of courage, endurance, and hope before winter claimed the plains. The first signs of winter had arrived. The twin suns barely warmed the red plains, and the wind carried a biting chill. Frost clung to the edges of rocks, and thin ice formed near the watering stations. The herd moved cautiously, hooves crunching over hardened sand and frozen patches. The woman rode at the side, scanning every ridge and dune for signs of danger. Caleb rode ahead, his rifle ready, eyes constantly checking the horizon. The nomads rode with silent precision, their movements fluid and careful, guiding the herd along the safest path they knew. The woman's heart pounded. Winter was no ordinary challenge. It brought starvation, exhaustion, and the harsh reality that one mistake could cost lives. She knew her promise to survive and become a mother before winter was more than a personal goal. It was a test of endurance, courage, and skill. The first obstacle appeared in the form of a narrow canyon, its walls jagged and sharp. Ice and snow had settled unevenly across the path, making footing treacherous for both humans and animals. A few of the calves slipped, but the woman was quick, guiding them with her hands and quiet words. "Steady," she whispered. "Keep moving. Don't give up." Caleb rode behind her, helping steady the larger cattle and ensuring no predator could take advantage of their struggle. The nomads used hand signals to coordinate movements, their expertise in the harsh terrain clear. Slowly they guided the herd through the canyon, each step deliberate, careful, and tense. Once through, they reached a high plateau that offered a brief respite. The sun, weak and low in the sky, reflected off the frost-covered plains, casting a silver glow across the landscape. The woman dismounted, tending to the calves that had struggled the most. She wrapped them in cloth and whispered softly, her hands gentle but firm. "You're almost there," she murmured, looking out over the horizon. "Just a little farther." "Hey," said Adam Sullen, "you've done well. Every step you take shows your strength." The herd, they trust you? We survived together. That's what matters. The next day brought new challenges. The plains stretched before them, flat and exposed, offering no protection from the fierce winter winds. Snow began to fall lightly, then in heavier sheets, blinding them in a swirling white haze. Visibility dropped to mere meters, and the herd grew anxious. The woman stayed close, her voice calm and steady as she guided them forward. "Keep together," she shouted over the wind. "No one strays. Follow my lead." The nomads formed a protective circle, shielding the weaker cattle from the wind and helping guide the herd along the safest path. Caleb rode at the front, using his rifle to ward off scavenging predators that were drawn to the herd by the storm. Each decision was critical. One misstep, and the journey could end in disaster. Hours passed, each minute testing endurance, patience, and courage. The woman's muscles ached, her hands stiff from gripping the reins, yet her determination never wavered. The calves leaned into her guidance, following her voice and presence. She reminded herself constantly, every step taken, every obstacle overcome, was a step closer to her promise, to survive, to endure, and to become a mother before winter claimed the land. As evening approached, the snowstorm eased, revealing a distant valley. At its center stood the final watering station, a small oasis with shallow pools and hardy vegetation. The herd, exhausted but alive, began to move faster, instinctively sensing salvation. The woman urged them forward, her voice carrying over the wind. Caleb and the nomads moved alongside, maintaining order and ensuring no animal lagged behind. Suddenly, a new danger emerged. Across the frozen plains, figures appeared. Raiders mounted on fast alien beasts, their weapons glinting in the weak sunlight. They had tracked the herd, hoping to claim it as their own. The woman's heart raced. There was no room for hesitation now. "Form a line!" Caleb shouted, raising his rifle. "Protect the herd!" The nomads moved into position, forming a tight defensive perimeter around the animals. The woman rode along the side, positioning herself between the weakest calves and the approaching raiders. Her eyes scanned the attackers, noting their numbers, their weapons, and their intentions. The raiders charged, but the combined strength of humans and nomads was formidable. Caleb fired carefully, forcing the front of the raiders to hesitate. The woman guided the calves, her movements swift and precise, keeping them calm and moving in the right direction. The nomads used their knowledge of the terrain to create obstacles, forcing the raiders to slow and scatter. The battle was brief but intense. The raiders, realizing they could not break the defense, withdrew, leaving the herd intact. The woman breathed heavily, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had kept her promise to the animals, to the herd, and to herself, at least for now. Caleb approached, eyes filled with a mixture of respect and relief. "You've done it again," he said quietly. The woman shook her head. "It's not over. We still have winter to face, but we survive." By nightfall, they reached the watering station. The animals drank deeply, replenishing energy lost to the long journey and the recent attack. Caleb and the woman tended to the calves, checking for injury and exhaustion. The nomads maintained a vigilant watch, their eyes scanning the plains for any further threats. Around the fire that night, the woman spoke quietly to Caleb. "We've made it this far, but winter will test us more than anything else. We must be prepared for whatever comes next. You've shown strength, skill, and courage. I believe in you now. And the herd trusts you. That counts for more than anything." A faint smile touched her lips. "Thank you. That means more than you know." The following days were a battle against cold, wind, and snow. The herd moved slowly but steadily, guided by the woman and protected by Caleb and the nomads. Every day brought new challenges: icy patches, hidden crevices, and frozen rivers that threatened to sweep away weaker cattle. The woman stayed alert, guiding the herd with calm authority, moving with the precision of someone who had learned the desert's harshest lessons. One morning the snow had thickened, covering the plains in a blanket of white. The herd struggled, some calves slipping and falling, others shivering from the cold. The woman dismounted repeatedly, helping them up, checking their energy and providing warmth with cloth wrappings. Caleb assisted where he could, but her determination and skill kept the herd moving forward. Hours later, they reached a frozen plateau overlooking the final stretch of plains leading to the distant settlement where survival was certain. The woman paused, surveying the land. The storm had changed the terrain, creating new dangers, but also clearing a path in some areas. She guided the herd carefully, step by step, her voice steady, her hands sure. The nomad leader rode beside her. "You have proven yourself," he said. "Few humans survive the desert's winter and maintain control over their herd. You will endure, and so will your promise." The woman nodded, feeling a surge of hope and determination. "We will finish this journey. The herd will survive, and so will I." As night fell for the final time, the settlement appeared in the distance, lights flickering against the frozen plains. Relief washed over the woman and Caleb. The herd, exhausted but alive, moved steadily forward, guided by their unwavering hands. When they finally reached the settlement, the gates opened to welcome them. The animals were counted, all present. Caleb and the woman dismounted, exhausted but triumphant. The nomads gave quiet approval, their expressions reflecting respect and admiration. The woman knelt beside a calf, brushing its frost-covered coat. She whispered softly, a sense of relief and accomplishment settling over her. She had endured the desert, the storms, the raiders, and the machines. She had kept her promise to the herd, and now she could focus on her deeper promise, to herself and to the future she had fought so hard to reach. Caleb approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said. "The herd is safe, the winter is survived, and you've proven your strength, your courage. You've earned everything." She looked at him, eyes filled with quiet triumph. "It wasn't just me," she said. "It was the herd, the nomads, and you. We survived together." The nomads gave a final nod, acknowledging her courage and resilience. The desert had tested her, and she had not faltered. Winter had come, fierce and unforgiving, but she had endured. In the quiet of the settlement, as the twin moons rose over the plains, the woman finally allowed herself a deep breath of relief. She had survived the desert, protected the herd, and proved her strength. The promise she had made, to endure and to live fully, had been fulfilled. The woman and Caleb stood together, watching the sunrise over the frozen plains. Life on the frontier was harsh, unpredictable, and often cruel, but it had also revealed resilience, courage, and hope. The herd had survived, the winter had been endured, and a new chapter of life awaited, one born from determination, endurance, and the unforgiving beauty of the alien plains.